Good afternoon. It just turned over to the afternoon, a couple minutes after 12 on a Sunday, a rainy Sunday. And in case you thought I went into the witness protection program, I did not. It's just been one of those impossible kinds of weeks. The only time I really had set aside for you as a class was the open live extra help session for this past Wednesday. And one of you got on with that, and we had a great conversation and helped Avenel through several points. I also posted Avenel's video in case you would want to see how Avenel and I reasoned some processes and strategies out in order to make her action plan be more effective. So it was for Avenel, but it also was for everyone else. So I advise you, if you're having any kind of trouble at this point, to make that half hour for yourself. It is posted in Canvas in one of I think the very last module. Actually, it would be the next to last module, since this will be the last module for this week posted up. So no, I didn't get anything up, and I feel a little guilty about that. But then again, I also felt that for the most part, everyone has been keeping pace with me or catching up with me. I know some of you are smiling when I said that, and I've been seeing some catch up with some people, which is also great. As you come around to the final tape, sprint towards the end of the racetrack. I think it's on the week of May 5th. So really just this meeting today and another one next week, and then we are done. So as I said to several of you, as I said to all of you, one place or another, absolutely regret that I couldn't have a chance to meet with you one-on-one, if not live, certainly online somehow or another. And I've already made the resolution that any course I teach from now on, if it's online, it's going to be some kind of requirement that people talk to me, whether it be on the phone or through some kind of visual online conversation, so we can get to know each other and make each other more comfortable with working with each other. As I said several times, I'm very satisfied with the quality of work that you've given me. And I have no doubt that the very last assignment, which will be due on the last day of class, I think that's May 3rd, 2nd or 3rd. I'll look it up for you. Well, the week of May 5th. So May 5th is a Friday, and I'm happy to have the assignment sent to me no later than the 5th. Quite frankly, I'll probably take it over the next weekend too. So we'll make it the 7th. So you have some time to pull yourself together to complete the project. I haven't had a lot of questions about what you needed to do, which helps influences me to conclude that you know what you need to do. I hope so at this point. If you're confused by any one thing or another, and there are some little nuances in here that might throw you a little bit, by all means, for heaven's sakes, reach out to me. And I've said that just a few times to you as well. I think the session I did with Avenel that I posted for everyone to see will probably make things easier. And what I've tried to do, as you know, is piece you into this in chunks so that you work it through. We didn't finish all those chunks, but I didn't think that the other ones were all that difficult to talk to. So I'm not going to talk about that today specifically. You also know that the last several weeks I've been doing 2 videos, one for assignments and the other one for whatever content I thought we needed to get to. And this one's going to be a combination of both, more nearly content than about assignments. There's one assignment due, in addition to the ones that were already due, and then that you've all handed in, as far as I can tell, although I haven't checked the last couple of days. And that's to get this action plan pieced together properly. I know I've also said this more than once, and I'll say it one more time, then I won't anymore, I promise. You know, when you get your muscles started and engaged with having completed this assignment, you will in fact have done yourself a big favor, because there will be something on the certification exam, which I understand you're taking this summer, that will be almost the same kind of premise. So you will learn some skills here that you'll need. And more importantly, forget the test. I mean, you're going to pass the test one way or another anyway. More importantly, that when you truly become leaders and chair people of VNL programs and so forth, and perhaps beyond that, you will know how to do a plan like this. And I know I've said this more than once too. Trust me when I tell you, there are plenty of administrators as we speak who don't know how to do what you have been taught to do as far as this is concerned. So the only thing I want to speak about in terms of the assignment is I'm going to add one more thing to do. Don't take off your shoe and throw it at me through the screen. It's not going to be hard. You're going to complete that chart, A. You don't have to fill every box in, although I really would like that. I'm going to read my rubrics for examining the plan will be, as I've said before, to see that you've been thoughtful, you've been organized, and you recognize the needs of change. And that starts with needs assessment, which I know I've said a million times as well, but continues back through some of these other things. I need 4 or 5 strategies. Strategies should be based on what your goal is, and each of you has different goals based on your own needs. And the strategies should also be in the next column over. You should be able to tell me what you will do to evaluate whether the strategies have in fact been effective. That's a biggie. That's very important. And then the ones about resources, the ones about the time frame have importance. The only thing I care about in terms of the time frame is whether you can sequence this out in some kind of reasonable way. The only thing I care about in terms of who's going to do it is just basically name the titles of people. You can't name names, obviously, who you think would be responsible for making that particular strategy work. And the other one that's pretty important is what I have called the yes buts, or the obstacles, things to pay attention to that you need to pay, that you might throw the plan into chaos if you're unaware that these things could happen. That's a pretty important thinking set that is necessary to have this happen. Now, the new thing is I want one paragraph, just describing what your thinking was when you put the plan together. What were you thinking about? What was interesting to you? What do you think is a weak spot for yourself? What do you think is a strength? Not going to be graded on that specifically, except for me to consider how it helps me understand the plan that much better, and your degree of confidence and self-efficacy, and creating a good change plan. So again, I'm going to put this in an email too, so you'll see that in 2 places. That the action plan, when you upload it, should also have a narration about a paragraph doing what I just told you to do. And that's due with the assignment. Okay? So, I mean, that's all I really need to say about this. And I think it was Pamela said, there's no discussion questions. There's no, what do you call those things? Journal questions. Well, how could I assign them to you fairly? Well, since you didn't have me from last week in a video. So I didn't do that. There are no assignments due this minute. Keep paying attention to the Canvas. I may think of something I want you to do, maybe in a discussion question. But right now, there are no assignments for this week. This coming week, I will probably post something up in a day or two. I will post something up in a day or two. And that will have a discussion question to it, and nothing that you should lose your mind about. That's a promise. Okay. Now I'm going to post the PowerPoint that I'm going to work with now. I'm not going to go through this whole PowerPoint. Some of it's not appropriate in the sense that it's not relevant. I guess that's a better word. Relevant to all the things you need to consider. And where basically is, I'm smiling, is It's a new theory of change. I'm not sure if it's completely new, but I think it's got more new to it than not new. And it's called futuring. You have heard me use that word. I don't know how many times. If I had a penny for every time, I think I feel like I've said it. I'd be able to buy the villa in Tuscany that my wife always says I promised her when we first got married, and we're not particularly close to getting anytime soon. So it's a newish, or if it's a new theory, maybe another way to look at it would be to think of it as a synthesis of some of the theories about change we've spoken about, or that Dr. Koza has addressed. It's called futuring. And what I have here is a slide deck that's, don't take your shoe off and throw it, don't take your other shoe off and throw it at me, is I think it's 106 slides. I'm smiling. I don't expect you to look at all 106 slides, certainly not in one day. He smiled again. You don't have to do that. I'm going to kind of whip you through this PowerPoint in general. I'm going to post the PowerPoint, but really what I want you to do is to watch it and internalize it, because you're not going to understand it straight away. You're going to marinate in this idea. All right, and we go from there. So without further ado, I'm going to bring it up. And again, I'm going to post this in the module. Don't feel responsible for watching every slide. Do not do that to yourself, because I fall asleep with it. And I'll give you the origins of this too. This is not something I created for you. I've had it in my toolkit for a long time, and I use it when I think it has relevance to a given class. So I'm sharing the screen and bringing up this PowerPoint. And I don't have the title on this, but usually the title I put on the maybe it's later in the slide deck, now that I remember. So here we go. I'm not going to do this all in one day. Okay. This is kind of a metaphysical existential exercise. Put yourself in your future place for a moment. You're taking this program because you have a preferred future. Your preferred future has at least two parts to it. One is that you become a school leader of some sort, I presume. And the other one is that you become certified in ENL. In order for you to, for a third piece, to be able to lead people to create the changes that have to be in place to serve the needs of increasing populations of children with English needs. It's three parts of a preferred future there. Now keep that word in the back of your mind, but now also think about, it's easy for me to talk about it. It's not so easy to think about it. I'll just skip over to one other idea for a minute. There's a book I've probably mentioned to you called Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, by Daniel Kahneman. Kahneman is a Nobel Prize winner in economics, brilliant guy. Who in this particular book, it's a tough book to read. It's not the kind of book you're going to read on the beach this summer. That basically says people don't like to think slowly. They like to have instant ideas and information and answers at their fingertips. They like to think fast. So if I say to you, who discovered America? Most of you probably straight away, not all of you, I don't think, but probably a decreasing number of people with a new sensitivity to the history behind this. If I said to you, who discovered America? You probably would say Columbus. You may not, and because that's an instant, fast answer. On the other hand, some of you who may prefer to think slowly and begin to really think about what does discover mean. Well, there's evidence that the Phoenicians from present-day Lebanon discovered the North and South America. There's evidence that certainly that the Asians from Siberia walked over the land bridge and became whom we call the Native Americans. Well, I mean, I would kind of posit that they discovered America before the white Europeans did. But that's about thinking slow. It makes people's hair hurt, no pun intended. Right? It's hard to think that way. Thinking about thinking about the future is hard. The research seems to show that most people can't think past about 10 years out before it gets very murky to them. Difficult to think even that far out. We'll talk more about that perhaps in the next video in a couple of days. And so it's difficult. And then you add in the issue of my word, mindsets. Another word I use connected with mindsets is dispositions. What do you think about the future? And that brings us to this slide here. So how do you view the future? And I think I'm not asking you to volunteer this to me. I'm asking you to really answer this question between your own ears. Do you think the future is a winding highway? I was on Grand Central Parkway last night. I was going toward the Jackie Robinson Parkway. I haven't been on that, and I don't remember the last time I was driving on that road and going to this great German restaurant up in Glendale. And thank God for GPS. But I didn't know the road. The road goes this way. It winds. I have to go with how the road takes me. I have no choice in that. So I'm going in a direction I kind of want to go in, but it's also going in places I don't necessarily feel the need to go on, but it's taking me because I have no choice in the matter. Do you think the future is a winding highway? I told you I was in Disney a couple of weeks ago, and we didn't go on Space Mountain. But if you have been on Space Mountain, I wager many of you have. You know that the Space Mountain is a roller coaster in the dark. If you've never been on Space Mountain, there's just a bunch of lights maybe in the walls, I should say, and you're on a roller coaster track, zipping around and making turns and lefts and going upside down, all these other good things. And you have absolutely no control over where it's going, and you don't have any idea where it's going, how it's turning and twisting. Is that how you see the future? On the other hand, do you see the future as a mighty river? Now, think about a river that flows in a direction, upstream, downstream. It flows in a direction. You know that you can go from point A to point B if the A and B are on that river, and it will go in that direction. You can navigate around a little bit. If you see some logs in the middle of the river or a boat coming at you, you can go left and right. But essentially, the river is taking you where you want to go, okay? And gives you a little bit of freedom to navigate how you may get there. Is that how you see the future? On the other hand, is the future a great ocean? A similar premise. If you're going from New York to London, and you're taking an ocean liner there, you know where you need to go. You know how to navigate it, but you also know, and your navigation and your compasses and tools and whatnot will most likely get you there. But you also know there are dangers out there or occurrences that you can't necessarily be aware that are coming at you. Could be a bad storm, could be an iceberg, could be, I don't know what else the pirates could come at you, I don't know. But the short story is you have a lot of freedom to navigate on an ocean, but you still have to work with the trials and tribulations, the winds and the currents that influence how you get where you're going to get. Now, are you one of those kinds of people who believes that the future is entirely random? That a second from now, after I finish what I'm about to say, I may fall down and never get up again. That's a stupid thing to say, isn't it? It was the first thing I thought of. Entirely random. You really, there's no way, and I don't like to use this verb here. This verb is not a good verb. I'll explain about that another day. There's no way to predict the future. It's impossible. You can't predict the future. So if you can't predict the future, you just go with what the future brings to you. No control. Now, in your own mind, Answer this question between your ears. Where do you lean? I'll tell you where I lean in a minute, but where do you lean? More importantly, as a leader, even if you're not a leader in your given school now, certainly you know the culture there. If you could get your arms around what you think everyone thinks about the future, what does your fact your what do your colleagues think about the future as a whole with a W? Is it the same as what you think as an individual? Now, I'll tell you where I come from first. I told you I come from great ocean for the most part. That makes sense to me. I chart a course. I watch out for the icebergs. I walk around the weather if I have to by radar and so forth. But I can navigate to where I want to go if I use my brains. My experience with a lot of faculty, and I get around quite a few places, is that as a faculty, and even with administrators, I ran into that yet last week, as a matter of fact, they're largely passive and think that the future happens to them, and they have very little control over it. Now, I can understand why people think that way, but I reject it as a true definition of how people's mindset should be about future. And you've got to keep this in the back of your mind as I walk you through this presentation, because what I'm talking about is now you have to understand where you come from in terms of how you recognize your role in shaping the future, he shouted. Okay? And that's why try this out on your family or on kids in your classroom. You change the wording a little bit, and you're going to find some interesting things. It's not a unanimous point of view. And I'll give you another quick example. Culturally, there are issues with this. I'm told, I read this in a book, I don't know if it's true. Oh, this I know is true historically. A country like Vietnam has been invaded 5 or 6 times by empires in their region and outside their region, specifically France and specifically the United States. Empires have invaded Vietnam for centuries. And what the Vietnamese have learned to do culturally is they just say, yeah, you come in, you'll leave, and we'll still be here. Their idea about future is very long-term. From what I understand, Asian people have a long-term view of future. I'm told to, and I read this, don't ask me where, I can't remember, that the Chinese expect a future in 2050 where they will be at war with the United States. And they are preparing for it now. In fact, this particular presentation, I forgot to tell you, was to a group of Chinese administrators from Shanghai province. And it was interesting. I did some homework. They didn't speak a word of English, although I think they really did, except they were pretending that they didn't. We did this about 3 years ago for Stony Brook University. And then these visiting administrators from Shanghai. So I did some homework on the Shanghai education system. And it turns out the Shanghai province, not just the city, has the highest concentration of colleges and universities. Are you ready? Committed to artificial intelligence. So I said that to them. I said, "Oh, I read that you're committed to artificial intelligence." And they looked at them, and some of them smiled. They weren't letting on what they were thinking all that much, but you could tell that first of all, I think they were proud that I had said it, and secondly, it was true because they're thinking long-term future. Now, on the other hand, if you say to Americans on whole, our culture is very short-term. If you say to a child, if you behave, I'll give you a toy tomorrow, and the child says, okay, and then the child doesn't behave because the child can't think a day out. Or if you say I've read this, if you say to a Navajo Native American, I'll give you this Kentucky Derby winning horse a year from now, or I'll give you that other horse that's ready for the glue factory now. Which one do you want? And because their view of future is murky to them. They will take the broken down nag now rather than wait a year. So you got to think about how that all affects different things. All right, so we've established, and then how does this affect schools? Is a premise here. This is a great YouTube about something called the emerging future. I won't make you look at it now, but really what that speaks to is the idea of the probable future. There's three kinds of futures, you see, really four, but I'll give you three right now. And it's in the PowerPoint later. There's possible futures. Pigs could possibly fly. I can make a case for that, by the way, scientifically. Not tomorrow, but possibly could fly. There's probable futures, and this is what the word sounds like, the likely futures, the emerging futures. And there's preferred futures. That is to say, what you want. Now, the preferred future has a great attraction to me, as well as I'm sure to most of you. Your preferred future, as I said to you earlier, is to become leaders in the ENL world. That's a preferred future that you have. It's one of many futures that you could have, but it's the preferred future that you have for yourself, which is great. But really, futurists, something called edu-futurists, spend their time in the probables. The probables are where you got to really look at all the different kinds of alternatives that are out there. So I recommend strongly that you watch that video. It's only about 5 minutes long, but it's really, really, really very good. I'm going to skip that one. And when I said there were three kinds of futures, I already told you about possible, probable, and preferable. There is also another saying. Again, this is not my saying. Phil Richardson said it. When it comes to the future, there are three kinds of people. There are people who let it happen. That goes back to that winding highway and Space Mountain thinking. Those who make it happen, and those who wonder what happened. I'll come back to that in another moment, actually. But to make it happen is what you're supposed to be thinking like. Don't forget that. He smiled. We're skipping that. Okay, we're skipping this. And we're skipping this. And we're going to skip that. And this is the title of this particular slide, presentation. Because we have met the emerging future, and it is us. We are the emerging future. You are the emerging future. Your children obviously are the emerging future. But the we means everybody. And not only we, it also means the environment. It also means the elephants in Africa kinds of things. All those things really add up to the same premise about what I call futures-based change leadership. Here's a little formula for you. Futuring, the act of forecasting. Now, I'm not sure if you're like me. First thing I do when I get up in the morning, ever since I got my Alexas several years now, that's about the first thing I do in the morning. I say, Alexa, what will be the weather today? Before I finish the sentence, it's giving me sunny with with wind. It tells you what the weather's going to be. That's forecasting. Not predicting, by the way, it's forecasting. Predicting is too specific. Futuring is about forecasting. It's about identifying what's all the probables may be. So when you hear a meteorologist on TV or radio say, there's a 30% chance of showers tomorrow, they're telling you there's also a 70% chance that it won't rain. So the probability is 3 out of 10, which is pretty low if you think about it. But some people will cancel that trip to the beach because it's 30% rather than the opposite of 70, because of how they look at the probable futures that could be out there. Now, think of that as the axle in the wheel, or what turns the wheel, what the wheel turns around on us, I should say, is futuring. But it's also about these other premises. The extent to which your school is collaborative, this collaboration thrives on futuring. The extent to which theory U is a little misleading to you. I'll use another word for that, a synonym. the extent to which you can use creative thinking skills to change the way you think, as well as the systems thinking disciplines we've spoken about way back in the beginning of the semester. Those three things speak to the capacity of the culture to change. And so if you were, as you're working up this action plan now, and some of you have said this in a number of ways to me, some of your schools are very open to making E&L programs work, and others are not, because they are not able to change. They do not have the capacity to change because their systems thinking is terrible, or because they don't know how to think creatively, or because they don't know how to collaborate. And then by that extension, not know how to future. Diagnose your school for yourself in 10 seconds. Where do you see them now? Okay, we're going to skip the goal. Well, actually, these goals are important. The idea of this whole presentation is for you to recognize how schools' capacity to change is based on futuring, and that they have to change their dispositions and their beliefs in order to make sure that those futuring is part of what their organizational leadership practices. And then what they want to do is to transform, not just change, utterly transform what the organization is, does, and believes. And they can do that if they learn how to do this in a proper way. I'm going to skip that one. Okay. And we talked about that already. This is a biggie right here. The ability of your organization's cultural capacity to change is dependent on the extent to which it's able to recreate itself. If they don't know how to recreate itself, they can't recreate themselves. It's not as though you snap your finger or you take 2 teaspoons of change and 3 teaspoons of decision-making and a tablespoon of unilateral leadership and suddenly create change. It doesn't work that way. The recipe is different for every culture, but the recipe all has the same ingredients. Oh, I like the way I said that. That's pretty smart. All right, so we've already talked about this, that the capacity to change is systems disciplines, which we've spoken about, creative thinking and collaboration. And I'll go with this premise all over again. The extent to which your organization is systemically healthy is going to contribute to whether that school can change. You know, I'm not going to take you through all of this, but you should read it. You've seen this before, so I'm not going to beat that one to death. It's really what you need to do is take the pulse, and I've talked about this, I know, in some previous videos, the extent to which the learning disciplines of systems thinking, per Peter Senge, we've spoken about early on, have to be healthy in order for the school to be able to adapt to change. Can't happen without it. This little chart is good. You know, what does a school look like with the systems thinking and without? And I'm just going to pick one. So if it doesn't have those things in place, it's going to stifle thinking, stifle decision making. On the other hand, if it is present, then you have room to make some proactive, futures-based decisions. Love this. I don't know if I've used this phrase, this saying with you before. Design thinking processes. That's about creativity, and that continues with the idea. We did not put our ideas to. Let me roll that back. This is about creativity and about collaboration. Really, 2 things at once. And it's an old Mayan proverb. I use this proverb with a group of Mexican educators in the Yucatan this past summer. I wasn't in the Yucatan. I was Zooming with them, and I gave this back to them, and they were so thrilled that I had found it, and so was I. I was glad that I had found it, and that they owned it. It was their own phrase, because the Mayans obviously lived in the Yucatan area in Mexico. We did not put our ideas together. We put our purposes together. And we agreed, and then we decided. Think about your own change. plan. Is that how you did yours? All right, so you know what? I'm going to stop here. So I don't want to kill you with this one. So I'm stopping at slide 26, and I'm going to post this up. You can zip through it just to get a handle on it, but don't pretend to try to understand many chunks of it. And we're going to go through this. I'll post at least one more video about this week, and maybe two. I'm not sure. I have to think about that, but I'll walk you through this. And this is in my words, in my view, the mother of all theories. This theory really enables people to understand how change is such a complex organism that requires some deft, smart, clever thinking, but it also requires understanding your dispositions, which goes back to that very first slide. So I'm going to stop here, and I'll catch back up to you Monday or Tuesday with continuing this, so you have it in your pocket. Please pay attention to the assignments. I'll probably post up a decision question, but not yet, so I won't be up there today. Please contact me, he shouted. Please contact me, he shouted. If you require any kind of help with formulating your action plan, and please don't forget to, as well, to give me a paragraph narration when you turn this in the week of the 7th, from the 1st to the 7th, when that's actually due. Take care.